We are joined by Kwaku Koranteng, who is the head of institutional business at Absa Multi Management. Kwaku, thank you so much for your time. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting budget. From your perspective, what do you think will be some of the key risks to the expenditure side, at least when it comes to the medium to longer term?
I mean, some of the key risks that I see on the expenditure side have to do with, the public sector remuneration in terms of, pay over the next 3 years. I mean, there are some upside risks to what the finance minister is, planning or trying to, negotiate. And there's still the outstanding constitutional judgment around, the wages. And then there's always the perennial potential support for the state-owned enterprises. It's something that has dogged, the budget for the last, couple of years, and all the problems within that sector, whether it's, ESCOM or other entities, have not really been, completely resolved. So those are some of the risks that I see to the expenditure forecast.
Let's hone in there on the aspect of the state-owned entities. I mean, some suggestions when it comes to, having that tougher stance and reining in that those expenditures or perhaps even those additional bailouts. Some have suggested that perhaps we should take these state-owned entities that are of no critical, suppose, national importance and couple them with a strategic equity investor and perhaps even a turnaround plan. Would that work, perhaps?
In theory, that's a potential solution. I mean, globally, public-private partnerships in certain sectors have proven to be, quite successful. I don't believe those measures can be implemented, over the short term. There's a lot of restructuring that needs to, take place. And in addition to that, actually finding the right equity investor who's willing to commit their capital, to these entities. It means regulation needs to change. The way these entities are run, needs to change. There'll be, potential issues around labor, etc. So it's not that easy, but definitely a potential solution, because it's often thought that the private sector is, more efficient at providing certain services than, the public sector can.
The one other aspect is the social transfers. There have been various conversations about a basic income grant. And although we've seen the extension of that 350 rand, that social net for the most vulnerable parts of our groups in South Africa, I suppose what makes it even difficult for the finance minister is that once you, introduce a more permanent plan on basic income support, it kind of has to match the longer term financing conditions. Does that make it even more difficult for him this afternoon?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, the current program as it stands adds another, 40 billion to the expenditure. And we're quite fortunate that, there's been potential tax windfalls over the last, let's say, 2 years. So that provides a bit of a cushion for now, but having a permanent, basic income grant that's actually higher than the current temporary relief measures will obviously, have quite a big impact on the fiscus in terms of, potential expenditure and the impact on our debts to GDP. So it's quite concerning, especially against the backdrop of, an economy that's not really growing. But I think we all understand, the situation in the country at the moment regarding unemployment, etc. So it's quite a challenging issue that, government has to deal with.
Right, Kwaku, we've got 45 minutes left until we hear the finance minister deliver his speech, and I'm sure you're going to be all ears in terms of what he announces and the kind of reforms we can expect, if any. But that is Kwaku Koranteng, who is the head of institutional business at Absa Multi Management.